Gul'dan fled to the distant Broken Isles, chased by Khadgar the entire way. Only by trickery and cunning was the warlock able to stay a step ahead of the Archmage, landing upon the shores of Ajuna and using his fell mastery to stay hidden from his pursuers. Khadgar linked up with the nearby wardens, as he had good relations with them in general. Their leader, Maiev, was not particularly popular with the forces of Azeroth and initially dismissed Khadgar, but, ever the pragmatist, decided to assist him in the hunt for Gul'dan. Hounded, Gul'dan was nevertheless able to reach the tomb of Sargeras ahead of his pursuers thanks to his direct psychic link with Kil'jaeden. This is the tomb that the original Gul'dan, from the Prime Timeline, rose up from the depths to plunder for its fell power, leading to his death as he was ground down by the countless demons trapped within. Alternate Gul'dan was substantially more successful. Within lay a stupid amount of demonic power, contained by the Pillars of Creation, long story, and reinforced by the ex-Guardian Aegwynn. Gul'dan took this power for his own and faced a choice. On the one hand, with such power, he would be Warlock Supreme, able to bypass his crippled body and do as he pleased, never again having to kneel before the might of others. But on the other hand, Khadgar and Maiev found Gul'dan and contested the Warlock despite his newfound ability. While he batted them away again and again, they never ceased harrying him. And in that moment, Gul'dan realized what Raytheon had not. Khadgar and Maiev, who actively hated each other, were doing everything in their power to sustain the other in their struggle against him. A brief bit of backstory. Gul'dan was from a small clan in a small village back on Draenor, born crippled into a terrifying world that ate its denizens alive if they showed any weakness. He was sustained by his clan, though he hated them for it, and they him in return. Eventually exiled for his bitterness, Gul'dan sought release, anything at all that would spare him his agony. At first he reached out to the elements, but the elements withdrew in horror at what they beheld in his soul, and so another source sought him. When Gul'dan returned to his village, empowered by Kil'jaeden's teaching and the backing of Fel, he killed every last person within and burned the village to the ground. Never again, he swore, would he be forced into such humiliation. Never again would he be beholden to another. It is this Gul'dan that stared at this choice, torn. Alone, he would face the Azerothians that had permanently killed one of the Legion's 2 demon lords. As a loyal servant of the Legion, he would once again be forced to kneel before a clan, but be granted their protection in return. And it should be mentioned that, unlike many, Kil'jaeden was true to his word. Kil'jaeden was not offering Gul'dan servitude, but a place of position and power as his lieutenant. After considerable thought, seeing the reality of his situation, Gul'dan released the terrifying power of the tomb. As designed, it channeled through the roof of the ancient elven building, tearing a rift in reality as it forged the Fellstorm, a direct pipeline to Argus. The third invasion of the Burning Legion had begun. Now, odd aside. While there were some early hiccups as we were solidifying the format of these LoreCraft videos, one thing I've attempted to be consistent on, from about Wrath onwards, is to only name-drop characters if they are significant, recurring, or a boss of a dungeon or raid. This is to make all of this easier to process for those unfamiliar with the series, to not bombard people with the thousands upon thousands of named characters, and make everything even harder to keep track of than it already is. If one remembers, we name-dropped one Cordana Fellsong back in the beginning of Warlords, one of the Wardens and a friend of Khadgar, and then didn't mention her throughout the remainder of the Iron War. She's not a big player on the stage. She helped Khadgar in his hunt for Gul'dan, and assisted in the crafting of a legendary ring, but that's it really. And yet, this is one of those funny bits of history, because as she journeyed with Khadgar across alternate Draenor, the orb Khadgar used in his hunt of Gul'dan was, in turn, used to corrupt her. She fell to Fel, and would otherwise be unremarkable amongst trillions of Fel converts were she not a warden. After igniting the Fellstorm, Gul'dan linked up with Cordana, who allowed the warlock to infiltrate directly to the innermost depths of the Vault of the Wardens, bypassing all security to retrieve the body of Illidan Stormrage, one of the only vessels on Azeroth capable of serving as host for Sargeras. Remember this, for upon this minuscule moment, many things will turn. After Gul'dan stole away with Illidan's corpse, the now defenseless vault came under Legion attack. Pragmatic as always, and arguably out of options, Maiev released the Illidari. Remember them? No, really, do you? It's been 5 expansions. The Illidari quickly rallied at their leader, the Slayer. Quick sidebar. All the journeys that have been had in the last 6 years have honed the adventurers turned commanders into lean, powerful, skilled fighting machines. The Slayer, at this point in time, was roughly the equivalent of all that experience in Acumen, and were especially good at exposing and exterminating demons. The Slayer's competence and position was no accident. They were the best of those who survived Illidan's brutal training, driven by their own personal demons to excise those without. Let's rewind time really quick, 6 years ago to the siege of the Black Temple during the invasion of Outland. If one recalls, Illidan had sent his best Illidari, led by the Slayer, through a portal to Mardum, seeking the Sargerite Keystone. The Illidari charged through Mardum, summoning the loyal Ashtung, Coilscar, and Shavara via soul portals, some by enemies culled, others by allies willingly sacrificed. They all knew the stakes. We've mentioned the Keystone a few times. This is a Titan artifact, personally crafted by Sargeras with the ridiculous breadth of knowledge the Titans had accumulated on all worlds and their locations, allowing one with the skill and knowledge to have coordinates to essentially everywhere. With it, one could portal to any world mapped by the Titans or the Legion. Such a tool was invaluable in the fight against their enemy, and Illidan had spent years in both tracking it and waiting for it to be vulnerable. An amusing aside, the Illidari sent to Mardum had no way home aside from the Keystone itself. Without success, these forces were doomed to remain there until defeated, or worse. Despite all their coordination and power, the Illidari were taking great losses on Mardum, hounded by siege devices, masked marauders, and outmaneuvered by reinforcements. But all their sacrifice was not in vain, as they were able to assault the Brood Queen defending the Keystone and claim it. Immediately they retreated, only for history to play out. In the present, the Illidari, practical to a number, immediately and unhesitatingly took up arms with their captors. Fighting side by side, the two groups managed to turn the tide of Legion assault, but by this point things really got moving. Demons rained down upon the whole of Azeroth, assaulting every corner and crevice, from Tanarus to Westfall, Hillsbrad to Ashara. By sheer coincidence, the forces of Azeroth were, by and large, already mobilized to deal with the Iron Horde threat. Remember, from Azeroth's perspective, it's only been a few days since the initial Iron March through the Blasted Lands, thanks to time travel shenanigans. Also, for the first time in Azeroth's history, the Legion sent their fell ships as part of the assault, powered by the burning souls of conquered worlds. Adventurers, champions, heroes, and commanders banded together to combat these assaults, because at this point this was a state of total war. There were no civilians to the Legion. Everyone had to pull their weight, or everyone would fall. The primary military forces of both Alliance and Horde, freshly mobilized and ready to move, sent scouts to gather intel on the Broken Shore, the site of the Fellstorm portal that was allowing Legion ingress. These scouts reported the shore ripe for invasion, and with the urgency of the situation, the assault was carried out. Tyrion, Sylvanas, Vol'jin, Thrall, Varian, Greymane, Proudmoore, accompanied by many commanders and their champions and adventurers, all sallied out to the fell-blasted beachhead. The fighting went badly from the beginning. With no idea the level of force they were fighting, the Argent Crusade were some of the first to fall, leading to Tyrion Fordring's capture and his torture in front of the Horde Alliance force. As Alliance forces got into position at the tomb's entrance, the Horde moved to cover their flank on the nearby ridge, where the trap was sprung. The greater body of summoned demon elites, and let me restate that in case I wasn't clear, an entire division of the most powerful and high-ranking demon commanders descended upon the Horde forces holding the ridge, alongside an entire wing of Legion ships. Unprepared, incapable, the Horde group wilted before this devastating surprise strike, and, frantic, Sylvanas sounded an emergency retreat. The Alliance saw none of this, save the Horde fleeing the field. What any given member thought of this is their business, but Greymane knew with certainty that Sylvanas had betrayed them to the Legion. It's possible he could have been talked down from this, shown reason and explanation, but for the loss of his son, the loss of his king. Varian stayed behind to delay the Garothi Reaver and Legion pursuers as the Alliance barely escaped, with a fraction of their number still living. Varian fought bravely, defiantly, and to the end. Gul'dan forced him to his knees and flooded him with raw fel, obliterating him utterly. King Varian Wrynn has been a part of our journey since the days of Northrend. A hot-headed and violent young man who grew up in bad circumstance. He was only 10 years old when the First War hit, forced to endure hardship, exodus, and loss. Over the Hellscream War, Varian developed into a better person, a better king. Azeroth is a lesser place for his absence. Varian was not the only casualty of the Broken Shore. Vol'jin, pierced by demon assault and abruptly cut off from his Loa through treachery, succumbed to his wounds. In his final moments, he heard the Whispers tell him who must guide them through this dark time, and so did Sylvanas Windrunner become war chief. In the wake of this utter catastrophe, the commanders of Azeroth needed to do what they had never done before. They needed to truly unify, not under Horde or Alliance, but under common orders. Each division representing the greatest, strongest, smartest, bravest, and best of Azeroth. Warriors, priests, warlocks, shamans, rogues, paladins, druids, mages, hunters, death knights, monks, and demon hunters. Under these banners would Azeroth rally, and under these orders would Azeroth stand.